Good morning, everybody. And I'd like to start with telling you how enthusiastic I am to be with this group. Let me start with a quotation from one of my favorite trailblazing women who happens to have worked in Africa, not on internal displacement, not on human rights, but actually on enabling conservation. But you know what she said? This is Margaret Mead. I'm sure you know of her. She said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And being here has convinced me that this quotation from Margaret Mead is still actually valid and resonates. And it is really my pleasure to have accepted the invitation from Patricia and the whole group to be here. And in the beginning, I was like, who is this group? And I'm very happy to have known more of what you do, and as importantly, know also the women who are engaged in this meeting and know individually the work that you do, importantly, men and women, not just women, that the work that you do individually in your own countries. As a Special Rapporteur on the human rights of internally displaced persons, I have been mandated by the United Nations as an independent expert to work on this issue and try to really enable the implementation of international human rights law and international humanitarian law. And on this basis, I use, as part of the resolutions given to me by both the General Assembly and the Human Rights Council, to use the UN Guiding Principles on Internal Displacement, of which you know of. And I am very happy that in your call of action, you have called first and foremost for the implementation of human rights and international humanitarian norms. Why is it very important that we have protection of internally displaced persons? Because one thing is that protection of internally displaced persons will actually guarantee that, as one of the panelists this morning said, they are not left behind. But laws and policies of IDPs can only be effective if there is action to implement them. And this is one reason why on the 20th anniversary of the Guiding Principles on Internal Displacement last year, with many other international NGOs, UN agencies, even governments, joined me in launching a global plan of action concerning the Guiding Principles on Internal Displacement. This is nothing rocket science, but it goes back to the original intention that at the national level, where there are internally displaced persons, and particularly here, where we're talking about women in forced displacement situations, they are not only not left behind, they are also protected, but as importantly, conditions are put into place so that we prevent forced displacement and we actually try to contribute to their durable solutions. This is what is very impressive to me with this group of men and women in the last two and a half days, because you have managed collectively to put together all your different national, regional, and international experiences, your thought processes, your perspectives, and as well as your different analysis from the feminist point of view, from peace and security, from human rights, from the grassroots orientation, wherever you come from, and come together with this call of action. I have to tell you, it's been a very impressive process, and the challenge, ladies and gentlemen, right now is what do we do with this call of action, in addition to continuing what we are already doing. Somebody said in the beginning of this conference that, unfortunately, we usually do things one step forward and then we experience 2 steps backward. In the Guiding Principles on Internal Displacement, we have actually chosen 4 specific themes that may be of interest to you, and which is, interestingly, you have actually chosen to include in your call of action. The first one I have already mentioned, law and policy. But the second also is data and analysis. And this aggregated data and analysis, particularly when it comes to the situation of women and girls, is very important because the situation of internally displaced women is not necessarily the same, we all know this, as that of internally displaced men. This is to say that we have to enable our more nuance and attention to the real needs of the women, but also how to go into their rights. One question I posed very early in this conference is, what are the obstacles? Because I have been reading a lot of analysis of internally displaced women. And in fact, whenever I go to, well, different countries and talk to women, I can already see that it is interesting that their perspectives are very different from what they want compared to men. And this is where we should also build up. What are the obstacles that prevent them from wanting to realize those rights? And again, I really would like to encourage everybody that in addition to law and policy, a lot of work still needs to be done on data and analysis. The fourth theme that we are working on is, of course, solutions. And when we talk to solutions, particularly to protracted displacement, this is more difficult than it sounds. And unfortunately, the data that OHCHR has come up is protracted displacement situations, that is, displacements that go on and on and on with no hope or no solutions in sight. The average is actually 20 years. Can you imagine 20 years living in a protracted displacement situation? And the average of protracted displacement sometimes covers a whole lifetime of a woman. And think about the children who grew up in that situation. It's basically a lost generation. This is why prevention and solutions actually go hand in hand. Because again, without attention to prevention of the conditions whereby displacement arises, and with no regard to solutions, will not be effective if they are not put together. Last but not the least, I'm really very enthusiastic about this, and this group has already put it on the agenda on day one, without me prodding you, because you come from those situations. And what is this? Participation. In fact, the first theme of my report to the UN General Assembly in 2017 was on this very basic, essential, and inherently significant principle of IDP participation. And everybody was taken by surprise at the General Assembly that this was the theme that I chose, because it is very obvious that many of the themes chosen are very highfalutin, sophisticated themes concerning humanitarian approaches and internal displacement. But I think it's important that we go back to basics. And this basic is, where are the IDP women and men and children? And not only as beneficiaries or recipients of humanitarian assistance, but as you rightly say, political agents in their rights, participating in decisions that affect them. And the situation of women, again, deserves a very focused attention. One study that it will be coming out of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees is a study of particular countries in Africa as to where's the problem with regard to the participation of IDP women. And I think this is a very good initiative, because we can, of course, try as much as possible to enable their participation, but this should not be at the expense of not looking at why they are constrained from participating. So these four themes are very much in accordance with your call of action. And this is one reason I'm very pleased to actually be here. And with the national implementation more and more of the plan of action in any of these themes or all of the themes, I would like to really encourage you, beautiful men and women, to go forward in this call of action. I would like to end, actually, by rephrasing the quote that I gave you at the beginning of these closing remarks. Remember, the quote said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens, etc., can change the world." What I would like to add there is, never doubt that a small group of beautiful, thoughtful, committed citizens, including especially women, can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Forgive me, Margaret Mead, but this is, I think, very important for all of us. So thank you very much. Good luck, congratulations, and let's go together. Thank you.